Hi everyone. So today we are going to see the art of the Middle Age. Let's begin. According to tradition, Jesus, known as the Christ, was born in Bethlehem during the reign of Emperor Augustus. In time, his followers would become so influential in the world affairs that our common calendar takes as its starting point the presumed date of Jesus' birth, calling it year one. As a matter of fact, the 6th century calendar makers who devised this plan were wrong in their calculations. So Jesus probably was born between 4 and 6 years earlier than they had supposed, but the calendar has nevertheless become standard. The Roman Empire dominated the Mediterranean region from the 2nd century BCE, later extending its control of Western Europe and the Middle East. But by the 4th century, the empire was crumbling in the West. So Christianity was one of the numerous religions in the late Roman Empire, but it quickly became one of the most popular and well-organized. Rome's attitude toward this new cultural force within its border varied, and often the faith was tolerated, especially since it came to attract an increasing number of wealthy and influential people. At other times, Christians were persecuted, sometimes officially and sometimes by mobs. One reason for the persecutions was that Christians refused to worship the gods and godness of the state religion, including the emperor himself, in addition to their own god. So clearly, such people were a threat to the political stability and well-being of the empire. So Christianity's situation changed abruptly in the year 313 when the Roman Emperor Constantine issued an edict of tolerance for all religions. Not only were all faith now free to practice openly, but also Constantine himself patronized Christianity. So while battling his political enemies in 312, Constantine had a vision of a cross with the inscription "In the sign Concord." He interpreted this to mean that following Christian teachings and worship the Christian God would lead him to victory. He won the battle and converted to the Christian faith. So this is the Arch of Constantine in Rome. His triumphal arch is a monument erected to commemorate these victories. It pictures the battle that secured his imperial title, as well as scenes of past emperors' triumphs and personifications of victory. The panel picturing Constantine and his court features small, stereotyped figures, draperies described with thick lines and limited space depth. So let's compare ancient Greece and the Middle Age sculpture we just saw. So can you find the differences between these two sculptures? The left one is the ancient Greek sculpture, which was made in the late 1st century BCE. But the implied motion of the sculpture shows very advanced technique of freestanding sculpture, and the skin and the muscle looks real. It is hard to believe that the sculpture's material is marble. It looks very soft, right? Also, we can feel the dramatic emotions through this sculpture. So it feels like we are in the middle of the happening. Can you believe it? This is made before the century. On the other hand, look at the right sculpture, the Arch of Constantine's sculpture. It looks like a flat sculpture and doesn't show any volume. Also, all the figures in this sculpture depicted as not realistic and very simple. So it feels like the advanced Greek technique was going back to the Mesopotamian art, even though this is made 400 years later since the left Greek sculpture had been made. The reason is that Christianity treats artists as craftsmen. They don't want to make any figures realistic and idealized. They didn't accept anything beautiful or idealized art, not other than worship of their God, Jesus Christ. So they don't care about advancement of artistic technique. They only focused on the description of the Bible. So that's why many of scholars have called the Middle Age as Dark Age of Art. And the same thing was happened in the painting as well. All the stories are about the Christianity for 1,000 years. They describe the baby with the same proportion of adult, just like this picture. And this is another example of Middle Age painting. The gold circles behind the figures are representing the light. And let's compare the ancient Romans painting and Middle Ages painting. So like the comparison of a sculpture, the ancient Romans painting, the left one, is very realistic. But the Middle Age painting on the right side is very simplified. So the style of art in Roman Empire had changed. The beauty of the human body was no longer important to artists. So now art emphasized the symbolism and narrative clarity, with signs borrowed from pagan art, but repurposed with Christian meaning. The idealized bodies and individualized faces of the classical era had been replaced with the stylized figures and generic facial features. However, their architectural techniques were flourished to build churches. So let's see their architecture styles. So under Constantine's imperial sponsorship, architects raised a series of large and opulent churches at key locations in the empire. So one of these was Old St. Peter's, built on the spot in Rome, where it was believed that Peter, Jesus' first apostle, had been buried. Christianity from the beginning emphasized congregational worship, and so fundamentally different kind of building was needed. So one that could contain a lot of people, a multi-purpose meeting hall called a basilica. So this is basilica. And it was the standard building types of Roman architecture. So based on basilica, the architects of Middle Ages developed three types of architecture styles. First one is Byzantine, and the next one is Romanesque architecture style, and the last one is Gothic architecture. So let's see one by one. So this is the Byzantine style of church. The Byzantine emperor Justinian I was a devoted patron of the arts. He founded hundreds of churches, mosaics, and painting throughout his empire. Byzantine churches are grandeur with a large scale, and it has dome, the roof style, which is hemisphere-shaped roof. And this is the inside of Byzantine church and the mosaic. So mosaic was favored Byzantine technique. Byzantine artists had moved away from the naturalism and realism of Greece and Rome toward a flattened, abstracted styles. So like artists of ancient Egypt, Byzantine artists strove to portray often complex religious doctrines and beliefs not seen from daily life. The Romanesque period was marked by a building boom. Contemporary commentators were thrilled at the beautiful churches that seems to be springing up everywhere. So later art historians called this style of these buildings Romanesque, for despite their great variety, they shared certain features reminiscent of ancient Roman architecture, including an overall massiveness, thick stone walls, round arches, and barrel vaulted stone ceilings. And it has beautiful single arch windows, just like this picture. And the last architecture style of Middle Age is Gothic architecture style. So Gothic style was started by a powerful French abbot named Suger, who wanted to enlarge the remodel his church. The Abbey Church of Saint Denis near Paris, he came to believe that an ideal church should have certain characteristics. It should appear to reach up to heaven. It should have harmonious proportions, and it should be filled with light. To fulfill those goals, his architects responded with pointed arches, ribbed vaulting, flying buttresses. It is ornate, linear, vertical elements that direct the eye upward. And it has a stained glass windows so large. They seemed like translucent walls with beautiful and exotic colors. And all sculptures of the Gothic style church were made very long, like the church's roof. So during the Middle Ages, architecture was flourished by building churches. These three styles are clearly different. So the first one, the Byzantine architecture style, is grandeur and the large scale with dome and mosaic. And the middle one, Romanesque architecture style, is simple and modern with round arch windows. And lastly, Gothic architecture style is sophisticated, extravagance with pointed arches, pointed roofs, and stained glass window. So that's it for this chapter. For better understanding the art of Middle Age, please read the e-textbook in Moodle Room. Bye.